Oh my God. Nice to see everybody today. I'll go ahead and start. Gora Gaganya Gana Gocha Goloru Haram Goranga Guru Tama Gopyara Kopa Bripsham Gopala Garavati Dam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshika Varam Satatam Tama Adama Kichuna Vachi Japchiya Dilega Kola Kahe Premananda Hemana Goranga Vidoya Dadiya Bola Vachu Goranga Kaha Goranga Laham Goranga Nare Jai Jana Goranga Bhaje Se Hoya Mara Pranare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Yashaiva Parambu Bhakti Labhya Prema Vidana Parama Kumata Tasmai Jagannangala Mangalaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Madhgavirapi Gopalam Sri Sukripayat Kripaya Jari Tadaiva Sambhaya Kritva Visha Yusta Priyajanam Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Sasanatana Rupakam Gopala Raghunatha Tam Panchakalpatarubhisham Kripa Sindhu Vyahivacham Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Nice to see everybody here today. It's been a little bit of a while because of all the Janmashtami things and that. I'm surprised though that there's no devotees here from South Africa. This is their program. So today we're continuing our discussion. In a little while, some of you will be here for the first time. I guess very prima. We're continuing our discussion about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Bhajan in the Gambhira. It's a very wonderful esoteric topic. I see, I've said this many times, I'm going to say it again today here, that I see Mahaprabhu's Gambhira Bhajan is a kind of bridge between ourselves and Raghunath Bhakti. Say, within the Gambhira, we see in Chaitanya Charitamrita discussions on Govinda Lilamrita, many different esoteric literatures, but generally devotees are encouraged to stay away from. But we find that in the Gambhira. And why is that? Because the Gambhira, everything done there is not for the pleasure of the sadhaks, which is always the case. People do sadhana to make some advancement for the sadhya. But in this case, they're doing it simply for the pleasure of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is our 11th session in this series. And it's our 5th session in a kind of subcategory of that, which is Mahaprabhu's behavior in the Gambhira. And we spoke in some of our previous sessions about the physical nature of the Gambhira, the necessity of the Gambhira, the identity of different personalities in the Gambhira and things. So anyway, on the last session, we spoke something about Ramachandra Puri and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, mostly from Anchilila chapter 8, and how Ramachandra Puri was very expert collecting all kinds of information about Mahaprabhu and criticizing him. And even when there was no fault there, he would go ahead and find fault. Just like we hear in the Bhagavatam, in the case of Daksha, there's a nice verse in Daksha Yagya story, how Sati, she tells Daksha that although Lord Shiva is someone without any fault, still you're finding fault with him. And this is the nature of Ramachandra Puri. Even if someone didn't have any fault, he would find fault with them. So, but what's very fascinating for me is that Mahaprabhu, how he reacted to the criticism of Ramachandra Puri. The devotees were going crazy. But Mahaprabhu would chastise them. And he would defend Ramachandra Puri's fault finding and say, look, he's trying to help me in my sannyas life. And he's the god brother of my guru, so we should be respectful of him. Now, other times Mahaprabhu just rather ignored Ramachandra Puri. It wasn't that he always dealt with him in the exact same way. And as we discussed in our last session, that's significant because sometimes we all have to deal with critics in our life. And sometimes we may bow our head and even agree with them and advertise to everybody what this crazy person said about us. But other times we just ignore it. Mahaprabhu showed us these two ways of dealing with someone like Ramachandra Puri. At no time did Mahaprabhu defend himself. At no time did he attack Ramachandra Puri. And that, for me, is very significant because if we want to understand Mahaprabhu's mood of Bhajan in the Gambhira, this is it. This is how. So today we have a similar subject in front of us. We're hearing something about Damodar Pandit. Damodar Pandit is not someone who most devotees are so familiar with. In the Chaitanya Mangal, in the Sutra Kanda, chapter 14, the 14th song of Sutra Kanda, Lochandas Thakur describes that Damodar Pandit had 5 brothers. In the Gaudiya Vaishnavabhidan, it's mentioned how he was a Gaudiya Brahmin who was devoted to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And one of his brothers was a famous Shankar Pandit, who was also a great devotee. So we can begin our discussion looking in Adi Leela chapter 10, which discusses something about some of the associates of Mahaprabhu, branches of the Chaitanya tree. Put this verse in the word. Largely what we'll probably be doing today is reading. I hope that's okay with everybody. We'll do a little discussion on the way. Damodar Pandit Saka, Premite Prachanda, Prabhu Upare Jain Ho Kaila Vakya Danda, Prachanda. That Damodar Pandit was a very, very advanced person, very elevated person, because he would chastise the Lord. Prabhupada puts it singular here, although it's not actually mentioned singular in the Bengali. And indeed, Damodar Pandit chastised Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on a number of occasions. So this is a significant discussion for us in front of us today. I'd like to look at Mahaprabhu's reaction to that and bring out some of the lessons for ourselves in the pastimes of Damodar Pandit and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Prabhupada, in his purport to Adi Lila chapter 10, text 84, he gives a sentence about Damodar Pandit. He says that Damodar Pandit was notable for his behavior as a critic. He did not spare even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from his criticism. This cannot be imitated by anyone else. So that's right away, that's the point we want to introduce here, that Damodar Pandit was in a very special category. He was rather impudent, that he would chastise Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Again, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami speak something about the nature of Damodar Pandit. We'll be looking in Chaitanya Charitamrita mostly about Damodar Pandit, but also a little bit Chaitanya Bhagavat and maybe a few other literatures too. Let's see. So, Tabi Chota Haridasi Prabhu Kaila Danda Damodar Pandit Kaila Prabhu Ke Vakya Danda. So just in this particular verse, Kaviraj Goswami is summarizing some of the pastimes, the later pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he mentions the chastisement of Chota Haridas and how Damodar Pandit Koila Prabhu Ke Vakya Danda, how he did Vakya, how Mahaprabhu did Koila Danda, he punished Chota Haridas, and how Damodar Pandit Vakya Danda, he chastise the Lord. Danda means to chastise or punish, and Vakya means with the words, with the speech. And Prabhupada comments in his purport that actually Damodar Pandit was an eternal servant of the Lord. He could not punish the Lord at any time, nor did he have any desire to, but he did give some warning to the Lord so that others would not blaspheme him. Of course, he should have known that the Lord is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is free to act in any way. There's no need to warn him, and such an action is not very much appreciated by advanced devotees. It's a little difficult sometimes for devotees in the West to relate to some of these kind of points. We have a very different kind of culture. I know coming from America, where ever since the American President Richard Nixon had his legal problems, people in America, they've not been very willing to respect authority so much. And even I've seen devotees sometimes chastise senior devotees, senior sannyasis and things, but that's not appropriate. It's not our position. Now someone may say, but, what if this sannyasi says something wrong, they do something wrong? It's not our position for that. And I remember it was after a few years living in Orissa that I finally began to notice the behavior of some of the cultured local devotees and how sweet they were and how they wouldn't correct me even when I would make mistakes, and they would know it and they would notice it, but they just didn't do that. They just felt it wasn't their position. And I remember seeing that. It really touched my heart. It really was a better way of chastising me in some ways than many things, because it really humbled me very deeply. See that I'm doing something wrong, but they're not, they could say something, but they're not saying anything about it because they're a much, much more cultured person than I am. So let's look again now in Madhya Lila. This is in chapter 7, where Mahaprabhu is speaking to Lord Nityananda, and he's kind of lamenting, in a sense, in a transcendental sense, about his situation there in Jagannath Puri and how he's being treated by different devotees. So I'll go ahead and put these up on the board too. He said, Jagadananda Chahiyama Bishai Bunjaite. He says, this Jagadananda Pandit, he wants me to Bishai Bunjaite. He wants me to enjoy material life, bodily sense gratification. And Jay Kahe Se Bhai, out of fear of him, Chahiye Korite, I do whatever he tells me. And with Jagadananda Pandit, Mahaprabhu says that if sometimes I don't do what he wants, then Jagadananda Pandit, he won't speak to me for several days. And being a sannyasi, he says, I have this duty that I should lay down on the ground. Tina Bhari Siti Snan Bhumite Shayana. I should sleep on the ground. Bhumite Shayana. I should take bath 3 times a day, even if it's winter time, cold. But Mukunda, he becomes very unhappy when he sees my austerities that I'm doing. Antare duka Mukunda nahi kore muke ihar duke deki more viguna hoye duke. Of course, Mukunda won't say anything, but I know he's unhappy, Mahaprabhu says. And then when I see him unhappy, I become twice as unhappy. And then he speaks something about Damodar Pandit. And he says that actually, in this verse, it's not really clear if he's speaking about Damodar Pandit or about Srup Damodar Goswami. But I think he's speaking about Damodar Pandit. That's what Srila Prabhupada is indicating. Most of our acharyas, I think, agree. So Mahaprabhu says, Amita Sannyasi, Damodar Brahmachari. This is why I'm saying, because Damodar Pandit was a brahmachari, and Srup Damodar Goswami was a sannyasi, generally we consider, but he also, Srup Damodar Goswami, kept the dress of a brahmachari. So he says that although I'm a sannyasi and Damodar is a brahmachari, still he keeps a stick in his hand to chastise me. Mahaprabhu was telling Lord Nityananda, this is my situation, that I'm being controlled by these different devotees, by the love of the devotees, who, out of fear of them, I have to behave in a certain way. And he says, Inhara age ami na jani vyavahar. He says that as far as our social etiquette, the Vyabhahar goes, in front of Damodar, he treats me like I'm a neophyte devotee, like I'm a younger person than him. He doesn't like it when I'm independent, Swatantra, and he's not afraid of me whatsoever. Lokapaksha nahi inhar Krishna kripa hoite ami lokapeksha kabu na pari charite. And he says that Damodar Pandit and others, they're more advanced, Mahaprabhu says, in receiving the mercy of Krishna, and therefore they're independent of public opinion. He says, but as such, they want me to enjoy some sense gratification, but because I'm a sannyasi, I can't do that. Mahaprabhu's words to Lord Nityananda. And Prabhupada, let's look at this purport here too. Prabhupada says a brahmachari is supposed to render service to assist a sannyasi. Therefore, brahmachari should not try to instruct a sannyasi. That's the etiquette. Consequently, Damodar should not have advised Chaitanya Mahaprabhu of his duty. So this in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and on purpose, Srila Prabhupada describes it that this is Maryada Vyatikram. Maryada Vyatikram, Maryada means proper etiquette. Vyatikram means to disobey proper etiquette. If I preach to someone senior to me, that's Maryada Vyatikram. It's just not correct to do. And this is a very important thing for devotees to understand. I see so many times Western devotees, especially, sometimes challenging sannyasis and behaving in a very proud, obnoxious kind of way, and behavior that you would never see amongst local devotees in India. They're more cultured than that, and they couldn't tolerate that. So Kaviraj Goswami goes on, explains that actually Mahaprabhu is controlled by the good qualities of his devotees. And on the pretense of chastising them, of finding fault in them, he's actually glorifying them and speaking about how wonderful they are. This is a very wonderful nature of Mahaprabhu. In his dealings, he says one thing, but he indicates another thing. We often speak about that quality, how the Lord likes it very much when he and his devotees, they have this kind of behavior where they speak things, they indicate things in a subtle kind of way. But Mahaprabhu, his austerities were just intolerable for the devotees. And so Mahaprabhu, he was glorifying the devotees, speaking like this. And so on another occasion, Mahaprabhu told Damodar Pandit, he said that this is in Madhya Lila chapter 11. He was telling Damodar Pandit, he says that I have some love for you, but that love is Gaurava Priti, Sagaurava Priti. Sagaurava Priti means with some awe and reverence. In other words, our relationship is on a lower platform than what I have for your brother, Shankar Pandit. Shankar Pandit, he's more spontaneous. And therefore, he says, you should keep Shankar Pandit with you because he has this Sudha Kabal of praying. He has this pure, unalloyed love. And Damodar Pandit then replies to Mahaprabhu. He says, Shankar Chilta Ama Hoite. Now, from now on, Shankar, although he's my younger brother, Ebe Amar Bodhabai. From now on, he's become the Bodhabai. He's become the older brother. On another occasion, again in Madhya Lila, this is in chapter 12, the devotees, they try to get Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to give darshan to Maharaj Prataparudra. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he tells the devotees, he says that I can't do this. I'm a sannyasi. I can't go and meet with a king. He says everybody's going to blame me and criticize me. And what to speak of common people, Damodar Pandit's going to chastise me. He's expressing some apparent fear of Damodar Pandit, who Prabhupada notes that Damodar Pandit was a very faithful, staunch devotee, but without any hesitation, Damodar Pandit would point out the faults of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu without any fear whatsoever. So when Damodar Pandit heard Mahaprabhu speak like that about him, he said, my Lord, you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You can do whatever you want to do. Who am I? I'm just a tiny little jiva. And since you want to meet with Maharaj Prataparudra, we consider that it's already happened. It's without any doubt, this thing's going to happen. But the main pastime I'd like to look at today is in the Anchalila chapter 13 of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And that's pastime where there was one young Brahmin boy who was the son of a widow. And this young boy developed some love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he would come every day to see Mahaprabhu and offer obeisances to him. And Mahaprabhu was a life and soul. of that young boy. But Damodar Pandit couldn't tolerate it. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes it again and again. Damodar Pandit would forbid Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, tell him, you can't see this boy. But that boy couldn't tolerate it, staying away from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And let's look a little here in Chaitanya Charitamrita, these verses. There's a very nice, sweet point here. Nitya aise prabhutare, kori mahaprita, jana priti tana aise balakera rita. That the boy was coming every day to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And because Mahaprabhu was treating him with great love and affection. And it's the nature of a young boy that he'll go to anybody who loves him. So I found this pastime very sweet, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had so much love and affection for a small boy. It's a very sweet thing when we see someone that does it. But Damodar Pandit couldn't tolerate that. And he became very, very unhappy. But there wasn't anything he could do because the boy would just ignore him. And then one day when that boy came to Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu asked him, what's the news, Ki Kabur, what's going on? And spoke with him for some time. And then when the boy got up and left, Damodar Pandit then began to chastise the Lord. And he spoke in a pretty heavy way. He said, Anya Upadeshi Pandit, you're giving Upadesh to different personalities. Kahi Goshaitani, you're a great Goshai, a great teacher. Goshai, Ebi Jani Mugoshai. He said that everybody's saying that you're a great teacher, but now we're going to find out what kind of teacher you really are. But Prabhupada in his purport says something a little strong about Damodar Pandit. He says that Damodar Pandit was a great devotee of the Lord, and sometimes a person in such a position becomes impudent. From what we've read elsewhere, it doesn't seem that this is actually Damodar Pandit's situation, but Srila Prabhupada here is giving an example of Damodar Pandit like this. We have to look carefully at the context of something. For example, recently in Goloka Dham, Sachinanda Maharaj was reading from the Gita, where there's a purport where I think it's in the 11th chapter of the Gita, where Krishna speaks about his particular form, and he tells Arjuna that he should always remember this particular form, Krishna. And Prabhupada then in his purport speaks about how the form of Krishna is the topmost form, superior to different incarnations. So then someone asked a question which I thought was a little inappropriate, because it was like it was like they were challenging Sachinanda Maharaj and saying, well, how do we understand the statement of the purport when we understand that the form of Krishna is superior to the form of Narayan? And not only is the form of Krishna superior, but the form of Krishna in Vrindavan is superior to the form of Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So how do we understand this statement? And Maharaj said a few different things. And I finally raised my hand and I said, well, first of all, we should look at the context. And this is Krishna speaking to Arjuna, speaking about his form as Krishna in the battle of Kurukshetra in front of Arjuna. He's speaking, Prabhupada in his purport is continue to speak about that. They're not making any distinction between Krishna Vrindavan and Krishna of Kurukshetra and there. So we have to look carefully at the context of something. And here, Damodar Pandit, he's being described as someone who's very impudent, or he says sometimes a devotee becomes impudent. He's not saying that Damodar Pandit's impudent. So we should understand that. And he's saying that sometimes they dare to criticize the Guru or the Supreme Lord himself. So that's a dangerous thing. But we should understand that even if we see our Gurudev go into a liquor shop, we shouldn't consider him to be a drunkard. And he quotes a verse from Chaitanya Bhagavat, Yadyapi Nityananda Sura Bhari Hoyai, Tatapio Hoya Nityananda Roy, that even if we see Lord Nityananda enter a liquor store, still I'm not going to be diverted from my firm understanding that Nityananda Prabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Damodar Pandit, though, goes on to chastise Mahaprabhu, saying that you're known as a great Goshai, a great teacher, but now everybody's going to criticize you. This, again, this is clearly the concern of Damodar Pandit. He's not speaking just to try to chastise Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he's speaking out of concern that people are not going to appreciate him. In the Vrindavan Lilamrita by Nanda Kishore Goswami, in the description there of the pastime of Krishna swallowing the first forest fire, the Brijvasis, they appeal to Krishna that you have to do something to save us, because if you don't do something, everybody's going to criticize you, and we can't tolerate that. So they're not praying for their own benefit, but they're praying out of concern for the Lord, that the Lord may be criticized. And so also this was Damodar Pandit's concern. And Mahaprabhu, he heard these things, and Prabhupada translates this a little strongly. He says that Suni Prabhu Kahi, when Mahaprabhu heard this, he said, Ke kya ha Damodar? Kya ka? What are you saying? Kya kaha? Prabhupada translates, what nonsense are you speaking? Damodar Kahi Tumi Swatantra Ishwaran. Damodar Pandit says, my dear Lord, you're Swatantra Ishwar, you're the Supreme Lord. No one can criticize you. You can do whatever you like, but still people will criticize you. How can we tolerate that? So you should understand that this boy is the son of a widowed Brahmin. Why are you being so affectionate to him? And although the boy's mother is a very good lady, Yadyapi means that if or although, Yadyapi Brahmani say tapashvini sati, she's a good Brahmani, she's sati, she's a very chaste, and tapashvini, a very austere lady, but tatapi, still, there's some fault, some dosha. Sundara Vyuvati, she's a very beautiful young girl. And you, on the other hand, Parama Yuva, Parama Sunda, you're a very, very beautiful young man. So people, they're going to look at Kanakani. Kanakani is a very sweet phrase. The common people, Kanakani, they're going to speak, they're going to whisper, they're going to say things to find fault with you. So Deha Avasai, why are you giving them some opportunity for that? And then Damodar Pandit became quiet. Mahaprabhu smiled. Antare Santosh, Bhajan Goswami says that inside Mahaprabhu was pleased with Damodar Pandit's impudence. And he thought he's actually behaving in a proper way because he's behaving out of love. And Mahaprabhu thought that Ihai Kahe Sudha Premera Taranga. This Damodar Pandit, he's moving on the waves of ecstatic love from me. And he says, Damodar Samamora Nahi Antaranga. I don't have any other intimate Antaranga, any intimate friend like Damodar Pandit who will protect me in this way. And so then Mahaprabhu went on with his duties. And the next day, though, he called for Damodar Pandit and he told him, Chalaha Nadia, that you should go to Navadweep and you should stay with my mother. He says, because I don't see anybody, Tomavina Tanhar Rakshika Nahideka. I don't see anybody but you who can do Rakshika, who can be a protector for her, because you're such a personality. You're so careful of things. Sabadan. There's a phrase, sadhu sabadan, sadhu be careful. That commonly it's an expression that you hear in amongst assemblies of sadhus before they take prasadam. Sadhu sabadan. My dear sadhus, please be careful. Sabadan. Don't just eat for your sense gratification. So Mahaprabhu is using that word here, amake jati tumi kwaila sabadan, that you're so careful, sabadan, that even you're able to caution me. And amongst all of my associates, you're the most nirapeksha, you're the most, Prabhupada translates is neutral. You're the most neutral of all of my associates. That's a very good thing, because without that nirapeksha attitude, without being attached, how is it possible to protect dharmic principles, dharma rukshan. And Mahaprabhu speaks a little harshly in a way, in an indirect way. Again, this is what's called parokshavad, meaning saying one thing but meaning another thing. He says, you can do things that I can't do. You can chastise even me, and what to speak of others. So it's best that you go and take shelter at the lotus feet of my mother, because nobody can deal with you. Nobody, you're such an intense personality. And then Madhya Madhya Ashibi Kabu Amara Darshan. You can come and see me now and then, and you should go back there again. And you should offer obeisances to my mother. And then Mahaprabhu, there's a long discussion, which I just included a verse or two here, of Mahaprabhu's instructions to give a particular message to, he told Damodar Pandit, you tell my mother a particular thing, that I understand that she's cooking for me every day. And you should know that I'm coming there and I'm eating these things. And then Mahaprabhu gives a list of different things that she's cooking. And he tells her that I'm coming every day and taking these things. And you just consider that all of it is just some kind of dream or something, but it's actually reality. So then Damodar Pandit went to Navadvip, and he stayed with Sachimata, and he delivered prasadam to all the different devotees and things there. He stayed there. So then toward the end of this chapter, we have this verse here, which I've highlighted in blue. Damodar agi satantri na hoy kahar, tar bhaye sabe kore sankocha vyavahar. That everybody knew that Damodar Pandit was very, very strict kind of personality. And na hoya kahar, tar bhaye, everybody was afraid of him. Nobody could do anything not perfect, inappropriate in front of him. They were afraid to do anything independent at all, because he would chastise all the devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, anybody who found them to be deviating from proper behavior. And by doing that, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami says that Kore Maryada Stapana, he established proper Maryada, proper Vedic etiquette. And then Kaviraj Goswami finishes this section by telling the reader that whoever hears a section about Damodar Pandit's chastisement, then whatever bad things they have in their hearts, agyan, pashanda means atheism, which is caused by ignorance, all that thing, bhagi, that things will go away. So then we wanted to look at Damodar Pandit and Krishna Lila. And Kavi Karnapur, in his Gauraganaj Dipika, he says that he was Saibya. Saibya Yasya Vijesh Chandi, say Damodar Pandita. Chandi means someone who's a little angry. That he was Saibya in Krishna Lila, and that sometimes Kushasya Karyato Devi Pravishat Tam Saraswati. Sometimes Saraswati Devi also entered into him. I found this statement a little revealing, just by the way, for people interested in Gaudiya philosophy. Sometimes we question how it is that someone, to give an example, Ramananda Roy, is described as Vishakasaki, but is also described as Arjuna Gopi and Arjuna the Pancha Pandavas. So how is it that three personalities have become one? We get a little bit of a clue here by this phrase, this word pravishat. Pravishat means that entered into. The Saraswati entered into him somewhat for performing certain functions. There's another book called the Gauraganaj Sutta Chandrika, in text 97 there, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives a different understanding. He says that personality who was formerly Dhanishta has now become Sri Damodar Goswami. Dhanishta is an elderly gopi who had kind of a motherly relationship with Krishna, and who would feed Krishna and take care of him in a similar way that Damodar Pandit would do. But then in text 169, he says the same thing that Kavi Karnapur says, Saibhya Sakhi Braja Yasich, Sri Damodar Pandit, that previously he was Saibhya. So Saibhya, according to Rupa Goswami, is one of the principal associates of Chandravali. And that's a very interesting thing, that Chandravali is a right-wing gopi. And now the mood of Chandravali is generally she doesn't chastise Krishna. And that's the same mood of her companions. But now one of her primary companions is Saibhya and Bhadra and Shama, Saki, Padma Saki. Those are the primary friends of Chandravali. But now the Saibhya is coming and acting more in a left-wing kind of way with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And I find it very interesting because Mahaprabhu is in the mood of Radharani, who Chandravali is an apparent rival of, apparent competitor with. And Saibhya is always trying to help Chandravali. So in this case, Saibhya is come and is chastising Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's in the mood of Radharani. So we don't find fault with Damodar Pandit. We see that just as we don't find fault with Ramachandra Puri, although Ramachandra Puri may not be our favorite person, according to Gaura Ganadhesh Dipika, Ramachandra Puri was Jatila in Krishna Lila. And Jatila's pastime, Jatila's relationship with the Lord is that she's always finding fault with him. But that fault finding gives some pleasure to Krishna. And so similarly, Ramachandra Puri comes and finds fault, and Mahaprabhu gets some pleasure from that. Again, in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, in Anchilila chapter 9, it's mentioned a little something more about Damodar Pandit. Damodar Pandit Aire, Deki Body, that after he went to see Mahaprabhu's mother, Giya Chiva Ai Deki Aila Satvari, then he quickly returned back to Jagannath Puri. And that when he returned to Puri, then Mahaprabhu took him aside and started asking him about the devotion of his mother and how is my mother doing, and does she have devotion? And let's put this up on the board. This is really a nice discussion. When Damodar Pandit heard Mahaprabhu's question, he became very upset. Parama tapasya nirapeksha Damodar, the Damodar Pandit who's nirapeksha, he's not attached to anything. But when he hears this criticism about Sachimata, Damodar Pandit is Parama tapasya nirapeksha. He's a very, very renounced person and detached from everything. Shunu Kroda, he became angry. and he chastised Mahaprabhu. But what are you saying? You're asking if your mother has any devotion? How can you ask that question? Huh? He said that Ira Prasadi said to Mother Vishnu, it's by the mercy of your mother that you have devotion for the Lord. And whatever you have, Jatakichi Tama Shakalatana Shakti, whatever you have in your life is because of her potency. So in this pastime, we're taught several things, one of which is that we should respect our mothers, especially our devotee mothers. And in particular, we should have respect for Sachimata. And we learn here that when Mahaprabhu is asking Damodar Pandit about the position of Sachimata, that we shouldn't misunderstand it and think that, oh, Sachimata is just on some lower platform or something. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, in one lecture, he said that if you see your Gurudev chastise some other devotee, you should be very careful. You see him chastise one of your godbrothers, you should not try to chastise that person on your own. Say, just see that guy. I told you that Vikram Keshri Prabhu, he's a rascal, and Guru Maharaj said something to him about his beard or something. So everybody with a beard is bad. Vikram Keshri is very bad. We should be very, very careful not to do like that because we don't know the relationship the devotees have with their guru. So he says that you should understand the position of Sachi Mata. Vishnu Bhakti Jana Bole say Deka Ai, that she's like the embodiment of devotion to the Lord. Murti Mati Bhakti Ai Kaile Tomare. She's Murti Mati Bhakti. She's the devotee. She's the deity, the very embodiment of bhakti. And you know this, but you're acting like you don't understand this, and you're questioning me. And Damodar Pandit gets upset about that. And he says that somebody just hears the word Ai means mother, then just by that word Ai, they get free from all suffering, from all distress. And when Mahaprabhu, then he heard about the glories of Sachi Mata from Damodar Pandit, Mahaprabhu became very, very ecstatic. And he started embracing Puna Lingera Korina Santu. Alingana means to embrace. And Puna means again and again. He embraced Damodar Pandit again and again and again with great ecstatic love. And he told him, Aji Damodar, Aji today, Damodar, Kumi Amare Kinila, you purchased me. Manarabitanta Jata Amara Kahila, because you've confirmed what's actually in my heart. So again, I wanted to go over some of these points because one important lesson we have here is that we should be very, very careful when we see the exchanges between senior Vaishnavas or the different devotees in the Lord, and not think that oh, because they're chastising the Lord, that I can also chastise them. Because Srimati Radharani becomes angry with Krishna, then I can take it as kind of a cheap thing and I can make jokes about that. Something, but it's a very, very sacred thing, something which is way, way, way beyond us. So Mahaprabhu is saying that, yes, you're right. Anything that I have is by my mother's mercy. I'm just living in this world, tanhara ichara, ichaya ami iham praviti, by her icha, by her desire. That's the only reason I'm still living here. And therefore, tanarina ami kabu kunari besudi. Rina means in debt. I'm in debt to her. I can't repay myself. I can't repay my debt to her. He says, I'm always bound up in affection with her. And so then Mahaprabhu, in that way, he glorified Sachi Mata and showed the position of Sachi Mata, and also showed the position of Damodar Pandit. And Vrindavan Das Thakur, he says that say Kebala Siksha, Kebala means only. The reason why Mahaprabhu did this was to teach Kebala Siksha, to give instruction to the people in this world, to show the love that Sachi Mata has for the Lord. Now we should understand the nature of these pastimes. Damodar Pandit, he's behaving in this way because there's a saying, one devotee poet's written it, that Vishai Shakta Chitta Shri Krishna Besha Sudurata Varuni Digatam Vastu Virginaindram Kimonayat. That just as if you want to get something from the east, you don't go to the west. In a similar way, somebody's attached to material enjoyment, they can't attain Krishna. And that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, in Chaitanya Chandradoya, famously said, Niskinchanasya Bhagavad Bhajano Mukasya, that it's worse to see the face of a woman, or the face of a sense enjoyer, and look at their face with the desire to enjoy than to drink poison. So Damodar Pandit is assisting the pastimes of the Lord, just in the same way that Jatila assists Krishna in Braj Leela, and the same Jatila comes as Ramachandra Puri and is able to assist the Lord in that way. And Damodar Pandit and Ramachandra Puri both provide a similar kind of help in the pastimes to teach the devotees the seriousness of being a sannyasi, the seriousness of following things in a proper way. So I'd like now to shift a little bit and speak something about this pastime from a different perspective. Damodar Pandit is also indicative to us of our own God brothers, our own friends that we'll find sometimes in our spiritual life. Mahaprabhu in his Gambhira Leela, he's Krishna, but he's showing us how to do very deep bhajan. And he's teaching us that when you go to do that kind of bhajan, you're going to have someone like Ramachandra Puri or someone like Damodar Pandit who's going to come and instruct you. And how do you deal with that? So in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Kaviraj Goswami says, Kshama Shila Paradanam Sahana Parikirtyate, that someone who can tolerate the offenses of others, Aparadanam, the harsh words of other people, that person is a tolerant person. And we should not be angry with them. Rather, we should act according to our position. And this is one of the integral principles of chanting the holy name. In the Padma Purana, the ninth offense of the holy name is described as Shradadani Vimuke Prashinvati is Chopadesha Shiva Nama Paradha. That we're not supposed to give instructions, upadesh, to people who have these two disqualifications, who are ashadadan, who they don't have any faith in us, or who are vimuk. Vimuk literally means their face is turned away. In other words, they're not interested in hearing from us. So we tolerate such persons, and such persons may feel themselves inspired to come and give some instruction to us, and we should just tolerate that. Recently, I saw on Facebook a friend of ours who someone wrote a very nasty, harsh personal criticism of them, and that devotee just posted it, that letter in front of everybody, and let everybody see this. Something like Srivas Thakur. That's the mood of the devotees. You want to criticize me, then criticize me. That's very good. I don't want to defend myself. There's a morning walk Prabhupada was on in 1974 in Paris. I'd like to show you. This is a very short exchange. The devotee asked Prabhupada, what is a devotee's greatest enemy? And Prabhupada said, he himself. Because he's a rascal, he's his greatest enemy. So get out of this rascal and just become your friend. Nobody is enemy. You yourself are your enemy. Nobody's the enemy. In the cartoon Pogo, we often commented that Pogo is a mundane comic strip in America. Pogo is a possum, kind of like a small bear or something, if you know what a possum is in America. And there's a whole series of cartoons about how there was a war going on in the forest. And it was Pogo against this other enemy. And you never saw the enemy, but you always heard about him. The war is going on, the war is going on. And finally, the whole series was concluded by Pogo's words. He said, we've met the enemy, and he is us. In other words, there was no enemy. It was just our imagination. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said a similar thing, which is later published by one of his disciples in a book called Sri Chaitanya's Teachings. I'll show you this here. He said that our nature is someone who's really elevated. They should think themselves to be less than others. Why should a person be anxious to pry into the defects of others when he does not seek to scrutinize his own conduct? The acts and expressions of the Vaishnavas cannot be understood even by the wise. Let us not be misled by the apparent sight. Many a person has mistaken a pebble for a pearl, snake for a rope, evil for good, by falling a victim to delusion by relying on apparent sight. When faults in some others misguide and delude you, you should have patience, be introspective, and find the faults in yourself. Know that others cannot harm you unless you harm yourself. So this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is teaching us in his dealings with Damodar Pandit. Damodar Pandit is Saibya in Krishna Leela. She's on the side of Chandravali. And now she's come when Mahaprabhu is in the mood of Radharani. Chandravali is a competitor of Radharani. And Saibya is always supporting her. So now Saibya has come and is chastising Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in the mood of Radharani. But this is a mood of a devotee Mahaprabhu was teaching us that if we want to do bhajan, then we have to tolerate that. In the Hari Bhakti Vilas, Gopal Bhatta Goswami and Sanatana Goswami have spoke about what is a bhakta mukyam lakshana, the principal symptoms of a devotee. And of those principal symptoms, the second one is Vaishnava Samana Nishta, that we should always be ready to show respect to Vaishnavas. The Linga Purana describes Vishnu Bhaktam, Tayaitam Yodrishta Samukha Priya, Pranamadi Karoti Vavasudeva Yata Tata. What is a nice verse. But this is a Vaishnava, that we should offer obeisances to the devotees of Vishnu. We should have a smiling face. We shouldn't be angry with them at all. Someone who can do that, that's really a Vaishnava. Savai bhakta iti gyeya sapunati jagatrayam. Rukshakara gira shrinvan tata bhagava teritaha pranama purvakam shankva yo yadet Vaishnava hisa. That we should understand this is a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is someone who's capable of purifying everything, but in spite of that, some of the devotee might come and chastise that person, and still pranama purvakam shanta. They're shanta, they're very peaceful. They deal with them in a very polite way. They offer their pranams to them. That person is a Vaishnava. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta comments in the purport in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, this will happen. Anybody who's coming to the process of bhakti, you will be criticized. But we should see that criticism to be the result of our own shortcomings. And we shouldn't argue back about it. We should think that oh, actually, I deserve much, much worse. And we should tolerate, in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati says, if we can't tolerate that, then we're going to fall down. In the Sanat Kumar Samhita, which is a very wonderful book discovered by Bhaktivinoda Thakur and promoted by him, it's described Tadanam Bhartsanam Kami Bhogyat Venigatastriha Granati Vaishnavanam Chata Tadrayam Tata Budai. That just as someone who's a very lusty person, a kami, Bhogyat Vena, he gets some pleasure when Striya, when his mistress chastises Tadanam Bhartsanam, she rebukes him and hits him. He gets some pleasure from that. In the same way, Ganati Vaishnavanam cha tadrayam tata Budai. We should, if a wise person, Budai, he takes pleasure in the chastisement and beating, which is offered by Vaishnavas. So this is Mahaprabhu's teaching to us in the Gambhira that don't find fault with Damodar Pandit. Rather, this is very good. If someone comes and chastises us, we should tolerate that thing. And we should not try to argue back with that person. As Srila Prabhupada wrote in a letter to Brinda in 1971, it's a letter which sometimes devotees are not so fond of remembering, but Prabhupada gives an important instruction for devotees in our movement. He says that I've noted your several complaints against the devotees, but it would be better to set the example rather than to criticize the defects of devotees. We should always remember that we recruit members from people in general. It's not expected that every one of our members should be immediately to the standard qualification. The best thing for you is to set the example by your personal behavior and try to reform others, not by criticizing, but by friendly behavior. In other words, from this pastime with Damodar Pandit, we should not imitate Damodar Pandit and think that, oh, Damodar Pandit is setting the example. Even we can chastise Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we can chastise some senior devotee. But Prabhupada here is giving a very practical example, very practical instruction. He's not directly saying it here, but it's kind of implied because they may not have faith in you. Ashradadani vimukhe prashinvati. They may be ashradadana vimukh. They may be They may not have faith in you. They may be reluctant to hear from you. If we find ourselves in that situation and we do want to help someone, then we only have one other choice, which is to do the hard work to behave in such a way that people will develop faith in us. As Srila Prabhupada says here, then better to set the example than to criticize the defects of the devotees, because if they don't have faith in you, and we see this even in the case of a good parent. Sometimes a parent sees that the child doesn't have enough faith in me that I can chastise them and tell them just don't do this. Sometimes we didn't have that much faith in our own parents. So a good parent then will find some other way to teach the child without giving a direct instruction. And I saw that also in my Guru Maharaj. Many times he would tell devotees that, sure, if you want to do that, you go ahead and do that. One brahmachari, a friend of mine, once went to see him and asked if he should be married. And Guru Maharaj said, yes, you should be married. And he came out very happy. Oh, Guru Maharaj is saying that I should be married. It wasn't my idea. It was Guru Maharaj's idea. He had that desire himself. So we should be careful, and we should understand from this pastime with Damodar Pandit, this is going to happen. We're going to have some persons who are like Damodar Pandit, who Damodar Pandit is a godbrother of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he's a junior person. He's just a brahmachari. Mahaprabhu is a sannyasi in his social behavior, and of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Damodar Pandit is taking it on himself to chastise the Lord. So this is something that's going to happen to us. And we should know how to properly deal with it as a refined, cultured Vaishnava. A cultured Vaishnava will tolerate that thing. Sometimes they may just ignore it, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ignored the words of the senior Ramachandra Puri sometimes, but other times the Mahaprabhu would chastise the devotees who are angry with Ramachandra Puri. Mahaprabhu would tell them, why are you finding fault with him? What he's saying is true. He's just speaking for my benefit. In a similar way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the words of Damodar Pandit. So this is a way to behave. We tell the story sometimes that I read recently from Govinda Das's Kadacha, which I was a little surprised to see a year or two ago that Bhanu Maharaj had translated, because that book is criticized by many persons online as not being an authentic book. But I was surprised that Mahaprabhu translated it. And then I thought to myself, well, it is, whether we accept it all being historically perfect or not, it is a book which is in our literary canon. It is a book which is in the literary tradition of Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And it's nice to know something from it. So I appreciated that. And I started reading it. And then I found many, many sweet stories about Mahaprabhu that I found were very appealing, showing the mood of Mahaprabhu. One such story, which we've told a few times, is when Mahaprabhu was in South India, he preached to a young Brahmin boy and made him into a Hare Krishna devotee. And when that young Brahmin boy's father found out about that, he became furious and picked up a stick and he came running to beat Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. A hugely offensive act. And what was Mahaprabhu's response? Mahaprabhu told him, go ahead, you can beat me. And my only request is that every time you hit me with your stick, you say the name Krishna. And then you can go ahead and beat me. So I don't know historically if that story is something that we can cite with confidence, but I found it has some value because it shows the mood of tolerance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when someone came to him. And this is a mood that as devotees we should also have. And if devotees would all have a mood like this, things would go so well in our society. There's always going to be people who have different opinions than us. Some are going to be more conservative, some will be more liberal. And we don't have to feel threatened by that. We don't have to go along with them. We should follow what we feel is correct. But it's not necessary to try to reform the world and try to run around and change everybody. As Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, in one article, in the Harmonist in 1932, he spoke about reforming the reformer. And he said that someone who's really chanting the holy names of Krishna, they don't see any need to reform anybody, because they see that everybody's acting in a perfect way. And he says, paradoxically, that as soon as we start listening to the holy name properly, then we give up the ambition, we give up the pride of thinking I'm going to reform everybody else. And it's at that point that the Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says that we're able to realize, we're able to attain our own purification, our own reform, when we give up the desire to chastise others. So these are some of the lessons that I see in this pastimes of Damodar Pandit, Mahaprabhu, and the Gambhira. Very important pastimes. If something's going to happen to us in our bhajan, we'll also have some godbrothers or persons who maybe even seem like they're on a junior level to us, who want to come and instruct us, sometimes even our own children. So I'm going to stop there. If anybody has any reflections or comments, we can go ahead with that. I know for some of you, Goni Tai still online here? He's not. It's really, really late. Mataji, do you want to share something? Vikram Akesha Prabhu, one of you?
I have one question. It's kind of practical. I can understand we should tolerate when we are criticized, or maybe we sometimes feel, oh, this is just some injustice towards me. But how we should have our inner talk while that is happening? What is the best attitude we should have inside? I can understand tolerate, but sometimes our rational mind wants to have like 2 + 2 is 4. Yeah.
So we should look for something good in everybody that we see. And if somebody comes and criticizes us, we should tolerate that. And we should feel like, oh, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, that we should consider that if I can't tolerate this, then I'm going to fall down. There's a nice, see here. There's a nice verse quoted by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, which is from Mana Samhita. Not my favorite literature, or a literature which is misunderstood sometimes, let's put it that way. Let me just share this with you. Samanad Brahmano Nityam Udvijeta Vishad Eva. So a Brahman should be samanad, he should be equal throughout his life. Udvita Vishad Eva, he should consider poison and dishonor to be like Amrit. Amrita Sheva Chakkang Shed Avanama Shed Sarvada. If someone just treats him in a bad way, in a harsh way, they should consider to be like nectar. Sukham hyava mata seti sukham chapati buddhite sukham charati lokesman avamananta vanashati. He should understand this for a Brahman, for someone who's really a Brahman, if someone comes and glorifies him, that's like poison. And if someone disrespects him, that's like nectar. Because someone who criticizes me, who insults me, that person is going to suffer in this life and in the next life. We should understand that we should feel sad. It's not that someone once commented when I was speaking on the subject about critics take the karma, which is a topic we printed an issue in our Bindu magazine some years ago with many different descriptions from different Puranas about how if someone criticizes you, you shouldn't criticize them back because they'll take your karma. As Bindu 92, if anybody's interested in that. It's not that somebody asks me and says, so that's terrible. I don't want them to suffer like that. It doesn't mean that we want them to suffer, but this is Krishna's arrangement. So we just bow our head, and in our heart, we should feel very sad and very sorry. And even we should try to avoid any criticism of them. Srivas Pandit, therefore, when they put those nasty things of meat and alcohol and things on his doorstep, he didn't try to argue back with that person. He just brought everybody there and showed them and said, well, this is actually what I'm doing. And his mood was, let me please that person. That person wants to criticize. Recently on Facebook, somebody wanted to argue with me about something. We were speaking about Lady Diksha Gurus. It's a very controversial topic. And I understand and respect that it's a complex topic. And as I expressed to him, some people, like this person who was wanting to quarrel with me, they feel like they're defending their guru, that this is my guru bhakti, and this is a cultural jihad, that I have to do this thing. I have to correct this evil feministic mood, which is attacking our movement. And their motivation is a motivation, sincere concern for the society. It's not done out of hatred to anybody. So I said, so I appreciate that. And anyway, he said, so just see, you're not listening to such and such devotees saying it, so you're doing Vaishnava Parad. And you're not listening to Prabhupada. And he had some cherry-picked quotes from Srila Prabhupada. Therefore, you're also doing Guru Vagya. You're offending Srila Prabhupada. And he went on like, and I just replied, I said, oh dear, I'm defeated. Please accept my obeisances. And that was the end of the discussion. Why waste my time arguing with a person like that? So we should be adults in the room. For someone who has children or deals with children, children are always fighting amongst themselves. The child is always coming to the mother or father and saying, Tommy hit me, my brother hit me, this or that, and the little boy's crying. Now, if the parent, when the little boy comes and says, Tommy hit me, and he's crying, if the parent starts crying, oh no, how will the child react to that? The child will be horrified. Well, oh my God, they're dependent on you to be an adult. So somebody has to be an adult in the room. We need that, even if we don't always recognize that. And we should be internal like that and just tolerate and just say, sometimes even when the children come like that, it's natural. The adults become a little annoyed, or maybe they think, you're just whining like a baby. It's not appropriate, but you don't say that to them because they're children. And so in a similar way, because we love them. And because we love devotees and we see that they're acting like a childlike way and they just want to argue for the sake of arguing or something, we should just try to see their motivation. They want to help me. They want to help the movement. We should always be looking to see, to be antarmukh, to be internal persons, not bahirmukh, not external, and just seeing the external things that people say. It's very, very important. Is that helpful, Manaji?
Yes, thank you. I see it as a big challenge for devotees and for myself also. I see it as a big challenge.
It's not easy. Just like in school, the tests that we get in school, sometimes they're very difficult. And what to speak of spiritual tests that we're going to have, this is a spiritual test. And they're not going to be easy. They're going to be difficult. In fact, we may fail. We may fail the test over and over again, but then we have to take the test. And we should just be patient and keep taking the test and try to understand the proper behavior, at least by dint of our intelligence, so that we can pass it. Okay? Manish, do you want to share something?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the wonderful katha. I've got two questions. First is, what did Mother Sachi represent? And I'm trying to understand the subtleties as to why Mahaprabhu sent Damodar Pandit to specifically Mother Sachi when there's so many other learned Vaishnavas around at the time who he could have said, take shelter from. Why specifically Mother Sachi? What did she represent?
It's very interesting, isn't it? So first of all, I don't know any direct comments on that from any of our acharyas. I've also kind of wondered the same thing. I mean, Mahaprabhu, well, first of all, he could have said, you go talk to Srup Damodar Goswami. And Srup Damodar he's like the acharya in our line. Where he could have told him to talk to Ramananda Roy, or talk to Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, but he didn't. And first of all, it's clear from some of the verses we were just looking at too that Damodar Pandit was chastising everybody. which means also Shiv Damodar and Roy Ramananda and others. So he wasn't able to. So Mahaprabhu was sending to someone who can argue with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mother. that's like the lesson. Even Advaita Charya, who called Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and so much older, you might be able to argue with him. I don't know. But Sachi Mata, she's the mother. You can't argue with a mother. So Mahaprabhu sent him there like that. And he also used Damodar Pandit then as a means to send messages to his mother. And it seems clear to me that by doing that, he also softened the heart of Damodar. And perhaps even someone could make an argument that the specific comments that Mahaprabhu made to Damodar Pandit may be very important. And what were those specific comments? He said, tell my mother that it's not just a dream or just some illusion, but it's real. So Damodar Pandit is someone who's a critic. And critics are the kind of people where they see you following, so they'll say, well, that's just your imagination, Prabhu. Like a sahaja. So Mahaprabhu is sending Damodar Pandit, tell my mother she's not a sahaja. Tell my mother this is an actual, factual thing. So the instruction may also be for Damodar Pandit. And then when Damodar Pandit came back, Mahaprabhu gave him further mercy by, first of all, by asking him to tell me the news of my mother. And then Mahaprabhu seemingly criticized his mother. Is she being devotional? Is she chanting her japa? I mean, or is she in Maya? Well, what's going on with her? And Damodar Pandit then couldn't tolerate it. So by doing what's happening in that exchange, Mahaprabhu is teaching Damodar Pandit that we shouldn't chastise senior persons. It's not appropriate. In an indirect way. And this is the way Mahaprabhu would correct others. It's a very, very beautiful way. If we can like that, then people will always love us and will always want to follow. Mahaprabhu could have told Damodar Pandit, you're just completely off, you're bogus, criticize me, don't you know who I am? But he didn't do that. Rather, he sent him to Sachi Mata. And then when Damodar Pandit came back, he kind of played along with things. So you're a great fault finder, Damodar Pandit. Did you see this fault in my mother? Is she chanting japa? Is she being Krishna conscious? And then Damodar Pandit now, his heart's been changed by associating with Sachi Mata. He said, hey, what kind of thing are you saying? How can you dare criticize Sachi Mata? And then Mahaprabhu became ecstatic. He was obviously pleased with them. This is what I see in that past. Let's explain directly to any acharyas. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's very helpful, actually, very helpful. And then one other comment, I was with Mother Guna today at the Gurukul for the Vyas Puja celebrations, and she made a comment regarding how important it is that we glorify our acharyas on Vyas Pujas, and in general, just as you got up to Parampara, you glorify them. And as you were describing just now, when Damodar Pandit came back, he was actually glorifying, because that softening of the heart, actually, he was glorifying the mother. So I think yeah, it's a very apt perhaps realization that you shared with me about the softening of the heart has actually changed his personality to also glorify other devotees. And we know Krishna's, or Mahaprabhu is pleased when you glorify devotees.
I mean, two different things, right? Two different behaviors. On one hand, Damodar Pandit is considering the solution to the problem is point out the faults. The other devotees chastise them. But then when he comes back from Sachi Mata, without even thinking about it, it just comes out of his glorifier. And that's the inner thing which is expressed in his heart as a real solution. And so I would suggest strongly that this is the bhakti solution. This is a bhakti revolution. It's always a positive revolution. And even what to speak of great acharyas, great Vaishnavas, we should glorify them. But even common devotees, even devotees who make mistakes and fallen down or something, if we can find something good in them and appreciate them for it, And there's so many bad things. And people say, well, I fell down, I broke the regulator principles, everybody hates me. But you're the only one who remembered that I liked it, that I never missed Mangal Artik. I was in the temple. Thank you. And it just melts their heart that you saw some good thing in them and you remembered that good thing in them. And remembering that good thing in them, some people will say, well, you're just being a sucker. Say in American English, you're just being cheated by that person by glorifying them. Out of pride, perhaps, sometimes it's hard for us to glorify and appreciate others. But we should try to see something good in everybody. And Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur brings it out in Sarta Darshani commentary in the 4th canto. I was mentioning how Sati, the daughter of Daksha, she pointed out to her father in one verse that you find fault even when there is no fault. You find fault even in Lord Shiva when there's no fault. And in his commentary on that verse, which I think is 4.9.11, I have to look, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur speaks about 4 types of sadhus, good persons, 4 types of asadhus. 4 types of persons who see good in everyone, some good. Someone who's a sadhu sees some good and some bad. They're not blind, they'll also see the faults, but they see some good in everyone. But someone who's acha sadhu, who's a very good sadhu, they just focus on the good things. And someone who's even better than that, they don't see the bad things. They just focus on someone who's a parama sadhu, that person doesn't see anything bad in anybody. He just sees good in everybody except himself. And then the asadhu is just the opposite. They see something bad in everybody, and ultimately the worst of them doesn't see anything good in anybody in this world. So our movement is a movement of seeing good in others, unless you're guru. That's something Bhaktisiddhanta described in one letter. He said, I don't understand why you're doing the awkward, difficult job of chastising others. It's my job. It's my duty. Why are you wanting to take that on yourself? So my Guru Maharaj, speaking about him, because here the Tithi was on Friday for his Vyas Puja, but you guys just observed it there today. He commented in one place, actually it was a discussion I think I had with him. We were asking him about how to correct such people when we see them doing something wrong. And he said, it's not your business. That's the business of the guru. And if they don't have faith in you, they don't see you as guru, then you can't say anything. Rather, we should do the hard work, which we don't want to do, of being a good example. It's much easier just to take a position like Prabhupada or like I'm like Arjuna. I'm going to go and chastise everybody. But you're not empowered like Arjuna is. You're just like a little child in India. Every little kid in India wants a bow and arrow and they pretend I'm Arjuna. You're just like a little child pretending, playing a game like that. But it's a dangerous thing. You're trying to imitate. So we should act according to our position. And if we don't have the position of guru, meaning they don't have faith in us, then we should behave in a way that they'll develop faith in us. Is that helpful, Manish?
That's very helpful. That's very apt.
Please offer my humble obeisances to my saintly god sister, Gunachuda.
I definitely will be.
She's happy seeing and hearing how she's doing. And I'm sorry, she invited me to take part in a program there today, but we had another invitation at the same time here today.
Yeah.
So wasn't.
That's okay. She asked me to express her deepest desire for you to actually come to the UK sometime soon. She said she's been trying to. She wants it to manifest. So just thought I'd pass that on.
Well, you can tell Gunachuda that the fact that we've not been able to come to UK for a long time is proof the Bhagavad Gita is true. Because Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, Kuntaya Pratijanihi Name Bhakti Pranasi, that I'll always protect my devotees. So Krishna's protecting the devotees there. That's the real internal reason why he has not allowed us to go to the UK.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Anybody else with any reflections or anything you'd like to share? Hari Prabhu, you're fidgeting. You have anything you want to share?
Yes, Prabhu. Please accept my obeisances. Thank you, Prabhu. So I was wondering a couple of things. First, I want to appreciate your presentation. Specifically, you said in the beginning that this Gambhira Katha is good for sadhakas who would like to enter the mystical realms of Raganuga Bhakti. And I would like to hope so. I hope so that I'm one of such sadhakas who want to enter those lanes of mysticism. And it's especially beautiful given that mostly we appreciate Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Supreme Lord, but this presentation where you are discussing his pastimes as a sadhaka is also very innovative and very interesting to hear. Thank you.
He comes
And
like we should. So he has a purport. He's come to teach us. Bhaktivinoda Thakur in one place he says that Mahaprabhu did not come to be a deity. Usually Krishna comes and he becomes a deity, but Mahaprabhu came to be an acharya, to show us how to do sadhana. You had something more, Prabhuji?
yes, Prabhu. Now, my question was, this is still connected to Balaram Purnima class which you gave also. In regards to the faults in us, when we identify some fault in us, how do we go about removing it? Like, I usually do a lot of planning. Sometimes, I'll do this, do that, and somehow I'll get rid of this fault. But most of my plans usually end up in a failure. They don't work always. So I'm wondering how much of it is, when we identify a fault in ourselves, um, how much of that gets removed by the mercy versus our efforts? Like how much does our efforts play a role in terms of, and are those efforts just the efforts in terms of prayers, or are the efforts in terms of planning? Like, I personally have difficulty with, like when you were telling the story of this boy who was getting so much love from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I was thinking one perspective is that Damodar is worried about his mom, but another perspective could be that he's a little jealous that why this boy is getting so much love but not me. And I was feeling like I do feel something similar. Like when I see devotees getting so much reciprocation, I was like, wait, hey, I'm not getting so much reciprocation from the Lord. I'm jealous of them. So I'm wondering how to go about when I see some fault in myself and removing it.
First of all, how do we remove those faults? If you have a garden and you want to take all the weeds out, how are you going to do that? One way is you could just take a lawnmower and just chop everything down. That's not suggested. So you need to do a little bit of hard work if you want to be a good gardener, and you should understand the difference between the weed and a beneficial plant. And if you're really a good gardener, you'll understand there's some plants which seem like weeds. They're not the vegetables that I'm growing, but they're still beneficial because they may drive away insects. They may help loosen the soil. They may help give nutrients in the soil in different ways, and they're a beneficial plant. If we know that so it begins by having some knowledge. And therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he speaks about the purport of all the different naimitic leelas in Krishna's pastimes and what they represent, so that we have some understanding, just like Keshi represents Ami Bodho Bhakta Ocharya Abhiman, with this attitude that I'm a great devotee, I'm the Acharya. And this is something but that's one thing, to recognize it. But just to read a book and understand what is a weed and what's not a weed is not enough for your garden, right? I've read the book, but still I read the whole, memorized the whole book, but still weeds are coming up out of the ground. It's not just by reading the book that it's going to stop the weeds, but then we have to do some hard work. And now comes more of a direct reflection on your question. How do we take out those anarthas? It's an anartha. It's not an artha. It's not something that we want. It's an unwanted thing. But we don't have the strength to do that. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur clearly describes it in the song Gopinath. He says, my dear Lord, I don't have the strength to do this. But still, we have to try. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Chaitanya Siksamrita, when he speaks about the demons killed by Balaram, he said that they represent anarthas that we have to deal with. So initially, when you say that, your question arises. Okay, I have to deal with it. What does it mean? How am I going to deal with it? How am I going to deal? Am I supposed to beat myself on the head with a shoe every time I want to become a big devotee or something, or this desire comes in my heart? How do I deal with it? So Bhaktivinoda, he says that he says several things. First of all, he says that these are anarthas that we have to deal with. And then he goes on to say that we deal with them by crying out to the Lord, by calling out to the Lord for his mercy. And he says, then the Lord will send Balaram. And I'm going to put this together with some comments that my Guru Maharaj made about Balaram. See, Balaram, he said he carries a plow. And the plow represents taking out the anarthas from the heart. And he's Balaram. He's a person who has bala, great strength. And Guru Maharaj went on to explain that Balaram is in the heart of all living entities, and his expansion is a super soul. And if it wasn't for the Lord's presence there as Balaram, we wouldn't have the strength to lift our hand, to blink our eyes, or to do anything. He's a source of all strength. So if we call out to Krishna, doing Nam-bhajan, and by doing that, we please Gurudev, we please Balaram, and then Balaram will come and give us all strength. As Bhaktivinoda Thakur prays in his song Gurudev Kripa Bindu Vidya, he says that nahi paya bala, I don't have any strength to chant the holy name. I can't do anything. Gurudev, is by your mercy. So when it's said that we have to do something, what can we do? Who are we? We have to recognize our position, and we have no strength to really do anything, but we have one thing that we can do. We can cry out with sincerity and beg and pray for mercy, and then the Lord will reciprocate. I was remembering, I feel bad, you wrote me a nice private text a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, and I never replied back. This is a good answer for that too, how to deal with those kind of difficulties. That we don't have the strength ourselves. Sometimes devotees say, well, I'll just fast, or I won't eat sweets, or I'll get up early in the morning, I'll do this thing or that thing. But none of it works. Kasaya na cha bhojanadi. Rupa Goswami in his Pajavali gives this verse beginning with the word kashayan. Kashayan means wearing saffron cloth. So I'm going to wear saffron cloth, I'll defeat Cupid. He said, it's not going to work. Just by putting on a costume. He said, or bhojanadi, controlling your diet, or studying Shastra, none of those things are going to work. But when we begin to practice bhakti, and we cry out to Krishna, then Balaram comes in the form of strength, and we get that inner strength by crying out in a very, very humble way. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur specifically says that he'll test our humility. And when the Lord sees that our humility is genuine, and that we really feel like I can't do anything on my own, then the Lord will help us. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. It's nice always just to hear your voice and see your smiling face today.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Radha Jivan Gopal Prabhu is there? He's not here on the line today, but Siddharthi, is he there with you?
No, Prabhu, he just left a week ago to go to Govardhan.
Acha. No, he's really international. He's not staying with the cows. Anybody else with any reflections, comments, questions, anything? Brenda Sundari, do you have any wise comments you want to share? I always like your comments. Hare Krishna.
Well, I joined a bit late, but of course the topic feels relevant. But I found it, I appreciated the question that Mata asked, and I was thinking, I was thinking, like, how have I processed the critiques that I've received over the years? And I found that actually the first thing that I ask is, like, what does Krishna want in this? Like, what am I supposed to learn? And I think I learned a lot. I learned a lot from receiving critiques. And one of those things is that really, when it comes down to it, I know that Krishna understands what I'm contributing, and then also what he wants me to develop more in myself, like what's my part. in it. Like, what am I supposed to clear? Which weeds? How can I refine and adjust? And then also acknowledge, like, yeah, I gave this much effort, and here's where I didn't give, and just sort of looking at it as a whole picture realistically, not just like, yes, I'm a demon, but like I'm mixed. So that was helpful. But it feels reassuring to hear the pastime. Lord Chaitanya, even Lord Chaitanya is criticized.
I remember years ago, there was a little girl. She was about maybe 6 years old at that time, the daughter of one of our devotee friends. She's a nice girl. She got married a few years ago. I think she has her own children now and everything. She's all grown up. I'll tell you how old I am. But anyway, I remember she was about 6 years old one day. Her mother told her to do something, and the little girl didn't like it. I remember in front of everybody, she started shouting at her mother, "I hate you, I hate you, I hate you," in such a terrible way. And I reflect back on it, and the mother, she didn't start crying. The mother didn't slap the little girl in the face or punch her in the nose or tie her up or something, but she just tolerated that because she's just a little girl and she can't control her emotions right now. And this is the way it is. And she learned something from it. Now, when you were commenting, I was thinking to myself that some people will roll their eyes back in their head if they're watching this on YouTube or something and say, okay, here we go. Now we've got Brenda Sundari. She's putting on her sadhu. She's acting like such a great saint that she's so tolerant and this and that and the other. But that's not what I hear from your comments. What I hear is just, this is the way I should behave. Not that I'm so tolerant, I'm like Srivas Thakur. I'm so great and this and that. But we should know what is the proper behavior of a devotee when someone comes and says things, which they will do. And that's one reason why nobody wants to be a manager. Everybody hates the managers. You know, the managers are all bad. Okay, so ask them, would you like to become the manager? Well, you know, I'm really busy. I have this thing and that thing in my life. I have time to go and criticize the managers, but I don't have time to take on that service myself. It's easy to criticize, but it's very, very difficult to give some to give some solution. And we need that. And if people don't have, I said this some years ago when we visited Ypsilanti, I think the last time. Dave Mahaprabhu didn't ask me to say it. I think he appreciated it though. But one of our talks, I told everybody just kind of point blank that if you don't like Dave Madhav, if you don't appreciate him, I said, you don't have to. If you don't like him, why are you here? Go somewhere else. If you don't have to like what he does, but don't give him a hard time. He's working hard and it's natural. He's not perfect. He has faults, but work with, rather show some other solutions. Open your own preaching center. This is a problem I have both with the hard right fanatics and the hard left fanatics in our society. We have fanatics in both categories. They want to preach to the others that nobody should wear a dhoti or sari. That's the hard left fanatics. We should just preach like that, not serve out Indian food. And then the hard right fanatics, they say, no, we should all live in communities with no electricity and no gas. And all the ladies should cover their head and we should memorize verses from Manu Sanghi. And I have no problem in one sense with either camp. But the problem that I have is when they want to insist that everybody else should also memorize the Manu Samhita verses. I'm being a little facetious. I don't think I should say actually that. Everybody else should give up their dhotis, saris, and just eat, veggie burgers and pizza and spit it out for the Sunday feast and give up our Indian culture. If something works for you, great. Just set your example, and by your example, if you're making so many devotees, you guys are doing so many things here in Denver. You're preaching to so many people. You don't need to enter into culture wars to insist that our way is the best way. Just do it. And if it works, if you're having a good result, that's the best way to preach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm just really, really tired of this. Everybody wanting to quote. It's a really childlike thing that I say. Of course, not everybody's perfect. Even Brinda Sundar is not perfect.
No.
Nobody's perfect. We shouldn't demand that. We shouldn't expect that even from our own parents. But we should, if we see something wrong, let's be cultured about how we deal with it, and not just try to stump the Swami in the class. Maharaj, you said this, but this is not actually correct. And over here, Prabhupada says something different. It's just obnoxious. Krishna, you want to share something? Can you come over? You don't have to see your face, but they won't be able to hear you.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Adi strong. I was really struck by this Bhakta Mukhya Lakshana. The chief qualification of a devotee is, in spite of being chastised, not arguing back, politely converses, and that is a Vaishnava. And I was thinking, why is that the chief quality? And then I remember that other places, Krishnaika Sharana, that's the Mukhya Lakshana of a Vaishnava, one who is taking full shelter of Krishna. So when you are able to accept that this is Krishna chastising me through this devotee, whatever happens, it's Krishna doing something to my heart, then you are able to do this.
Yeah, and to look at what you just said in another light, what is the principal point of that? Principal point is that we should be looking to make advancement. We should be looking inside. That's the most important thing. The most important thing is not my pride. The most important thing is not my position, my fame and things. Who cares about that? The most important thing is, how am I going to make advancement?
And that's why Krishna is doing something. So I see it as Krishna is doing something.
And it's really powerful. I appreciate Brinda Sundar. I'm sorry to glorify you, but I really appreciate mothers, temple presidents, and somebody does both things. It's really, really good for you. Thank you. But someone who takes on that kind of service, everybody naturally wants to criticize it. And if such a devotee in that situation can show patience and tolerance and be an adult in the room, and not be a child in the room and start crying and whining and entering into debates that everybody else may do that, but we act in an adult way. Wow, what a wonderful example it sets for our society. Your children never speak like that to you, do they?
No, they don't. They don't. So I think they're actually more spiritually, and I think their consciousness is more elevated than mine. I think in this case, yeah, my children don't ever say that, and they are comfortable in sharing when they're not happy in a way that's like not violent. You know, they know that they can. I think that's part of it too. They know that they can share when they're upset about something, and then I can hear them and not be upset that they're upset. Definitely makes it easier.
Yeah, a high-class person has the ability to correct somebody without using harsh words. Just like Fakir Mahaprabhu, sometimes, oh my God, if you ever watched the Flintstones, when Fred Flintstone did something bad, he became like this big. That was me sometimes in the room with Fakir Mahaprabhu. He would say things and I would just start getting smaller and smaller. And what would he say? He would glorify me. And say, Madhavananda is such a pundit, he's such a... This is coming from someone who has like probably 50 PhD persons who got their PhDs under him, who grades Sanskrit classes for the on Shankar Vedanta, who knows like all the different, who memorized the Amarakosh dictionary at the age of like 12 years old. He's an amazing, amazing scholar. And he's calling me a pundit. I don't even barely know English properly, much less Sanskrit or Bengali. And somebody externally will say, wow, just see, Madhavananda is really great. But no, he was chastising me like anything. He's such a high-class person. And sometimes maybe your children also, they may say something in a way which enables you to see your own shortcoming. I don't know. But anyway, that's the quality of a high-class person. Thank you,
Thank you
Brenda.
for,
I'm really happy you got to take part today. I know you're busy with everything.
yeah, I'm so glad I'm back. I can jump back into the Sangha. Thank you.
Anybody else want to share anything? Go ahead and stop for the day.
Hare Krishna.
Lula Purushottam, I knew you were going to have something.
I wanted to thank you for bringing up the Damodar Pandit because I really like that pastime since long ago. And it actually helped me very much because I remember times when I was really disturbed by having around me the devotees who were like really fond of pointing out the faults with all others. And when I got to know about Damodar Pandit's pastimes, I could identify them like that. It helped me to avoid like fault finding on my side, saying, look what fault finders they are, but give them I even call that like, as we say, giving the credit of doubt. So I call it like giving a credit of Damodar Pandit. Meaning like maybe it's the Lord's desire that such devotees are in the Sangha of devotees, and they are like, because when we read through the pastimes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, then we can see that there is the credit that he helped devotees to like behave more properly and not be so lenient in the proper conduct. So that was like the credit expressed to Damodar Pandit. So that's one thing. And what I really appreciate on going deep into that pastime today is how, because this would still be discussion on social level, let's say, like who's doing disturbance in the society and why and like that. But what I really appreciated was that depth of seeing the relevance for our own bhajan. Like how is it connected with our own attitude and with the processing like dealings with these persons and like that. And the third thing, when I was contemplating it and thinking about it, then third thing is that there is such a strong message if we allow ourselves to look into a mirror and admit that we ourselves might be to a degree the fault finders and pointing out to the faults of others, then there is like such a simple but straightforward message that Mahaprabhu just doesn't like it. Although there is expressed that credit that he was helpful to the society in such a way that they, at least in his presence, devotees try to behave maybe even more properly than would be their nature, in a sense. So one could see it as a credit for the society of the devotees, but still the obvious reaction of Mahaprabhu was that, hey, go to my mother, go to Navadvip, and then don't do it anymore here. So in that sense, like the third part of the lesson for me is that it just so frankly says that it's not really way to please the Lord, in a sense, because someone could think about the pointing out the fault, that's my service, that's what I do for my Guru Maharaj, what I do for Srila Prabhupada's movement. I save the movement with with showing all the faults. But after all, when we go through the pastime, as it is narrated, with some self-reflection, then we can see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after all, didn't approve it and didn't appreciate it, and rather made the steps to help Damodar Pandit to overcome that behavior.
Yeah, I'm going to just reflect a little bit what you're saying. Mahaprabhu didn't appreciate it sometimes, and I agree with you, but sometimes we think, oh, he didn't appreciate it, and therefore I shouldn't appreciate something, and that means that I should come out and start screaming and shouting and being very angry. But Mahaprabhu was so very, very sweet in his behavior. And we were just listening to a lecture yesterday of my Guru Maharaj from 1993, where he comes back from the GBC meetings and he tells the devotees directly, he said, I'm just like your father. And he said, just like children, sometimes they pass urine and stool on the lap of the parents. So you've also done the same thing to me. And he said, you don't understand this and you don't see this. And he was speaking in such a very sweet, loving, affectionate way. He wasn't harsh, he wasn't shouting, he wasn't angry. But what he was saying was so heavy, was so strong.
Yeah.
This is the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That when Mahaprabhu corrects someone, he does it with so much love and sweetness. And we also have to remember that Damodar Pandit is Saibya in Krishna Lila, and this is just what Saibya is going to do. Saibya always does some conniving things to try to minimize Radharani or Radharani Sakis and things. And this, in effect, is what Damodar Pandit, that's the mood that he's coming and doing. And Mahaprabhu is tolerating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Vikram Keshavu. Yeah, I may upload the lectures from Goloka Dham on YouTube. We'll see. I uploaded one of them. It's just I'm going to have to. The big problem is I'm going to have to go back and find all of them because now they show them every day, and it's been a week since I was there. So there's going to be probably 10 or 11 lectures since my last ones. I would like to upload those all if we can, but I'm not going to promise you. Siddha Hari Prabhu has another question. Interesting question. Chaitanya Bhagavat said that anyone who calls that Ai or mother is free from all sinful acts. How to understand this? Well, let's look at that verse. This is in Chaitanya Bhagavat, Anchalila. Put it on the screen. Anchalila chapter 9, text 102. And this is Damodar Pandit speaking to Mahaprabhu. The Prakrita Shabde Oje Bhalibeka Ai. That if someone considers the word Ai means mother, to be a Prakrita Shabda, an ordinary word, even in that case, and they call out Ai, Shabda Prabhave Tahara Dukanai, then they call out that syllable Ai, then they're going to be freed from all distress. So here's my humble take on this. I don't exactly see that it means that you're free from material bondage or anything, but that someone's free from distress. In the same way that it's a common thing if some bank robber is fighting with the police or something, there's a big gunfight, and they shoot and kill him. Then the last words he sometimes calls out says, "Mom, Mother." It's a common thing that people think of their mother when they're in some distressful condition, because mother is that personality who has unconditional love for us and who appreciates us no matter what. So by calling out mother here in a material way, I would say that it's free from all distress. And in this particular case, taken out of the context where Damodar Pandit is speaking about the glories of Sachi Mata, that he's specifically saying that he's addressing her as a Bhakti Murti Manta, that she's the embodiment of Bhakti. And so if we call that Ai in that context, and thinking of Sachi Mata, Jai Sachi Nandan, that we call out Mahaprabhu, his name as being the son of Mother Sachi, then we're going to please Sachimata. And we'll be free from all distress, any anxieties and things that may be there to attack our bhakti. That's my humble take on that, Siddha Hari Prabhu. It's a good question. Is that helpful?
So does that mean Prabhu to call out to Mother Sachi for help, or to call Lord Chaitanya in reference to Mother Sachi?
Either way, we call that to Krishna. We say Yashoda Nandan, 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 and that gives Krishna more pleasure. It gives pleasure to the devotees. Naturally, Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, they're pleased when they hear that we're remembering their role with Krishna. And similarly, we call it Jai Sachinandan or Goda Hari. Sachimata is pleased by that. The devotees are pleased by that. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is pleased by that. It's a very beautiful thing. We don't address the Lord just Jai Gaur. That's why Jai Gaur's not here tonight. With this, we don't just say Jai Gaur, but we say Jai Sachinandan, Jai Gadadhar Pranadana, that personality who's the wealth of the heart of Gadadhar Pandit, Nityananda Pranadana, the life of Nityananda Prabhu. We address him in connection with other devotees. Okay. Well, Gaura Prabhu, it's absolute light there, huh? On the other side of the planet. The sun's finally come up.
Yeah, the sun is rising soon.
90%. All right. Is that okay, Leela Purushottam Prabhu? You have anything else you want to share?
No, thank you. Thank you so much.
Good, Prabhuji. And if Jai Gaur, if you're watching this later on, we miss your association today here. And we also miss Bana Bihari. We miss all the devotees in South Africa. I don't know. We're doing this for them, actually. Chaitanya Prabhu, who organizes it, didn't show up either. So
Are we in the right link?
yeah, we're in the right link. Krishna Kun just asked us the same link. Anyway, here we are. We were just speaking about Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj's sanghas, how he's doing, and also how, with the devotees in New York, I was talking to you about from Goloka Dham, how the temple president, the Bhakti Center, and Damodar Maharaj's disciple, I can't remember names, I'm not coming to mind. I mentioned it several times. Anyway, they're doing some online, we call it the Wisdom of the Sages. And they have thousands of people watching that. But at the same time, they break them up into little groups, about 8 persons in each group. And in that
Raghunath and Kaustubha are their names.
Thank you. I'm terrible with shows of living persons. But they're breaking up into small groups. And so we have our little group here. I appreciate it. At 10 people here today. Manish already left. Okay, so thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveda Bhakta Vinda ki, Gaur Premanandi Hari. Vancha Kalpa Guru Dishcha, Vipasindhu Devacha, Vipamanpada Vaishnavi.